and allow you to maybe bring us up to speed.
Great. Good afternoon. This is Stacy Sept with Nevada Rural Housing Authority. I just wanted to come on and let you know that we are bringing this back to the board for approval as a conduit to work with both the city and county to complete this ESA and to resolve any potential issues that there may be on this site. Regardless of whether we get approval to do any work there, at this point in time, we understand and know that there are issues with the current residents who live around the area who don't want to see the land zoning change and don't want to see apartments in their backyard. So we are looking at other sites throughout Winnemucca at this point in time, and we don't anticipate utilizing this site for any kind of building. We have no ownership rights to this site. However, we did feel it was necessary to bring the EPA back as it is an approved grant. So why not take advantage of that and verify or validate what may or may not exist there and take care of it.
So, Mr. Chair, so I'll just add on to Stacy. Thanks, Stacy, for being on. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Is that obviously, so the cost for the assessment is covered by the grant, so there'd be no fiscal impact to the county on the assessment. And then I guess what I'd like to do is maybe hand it over to you, David Friedman, and let you address the issue of, let's say we do find something, what is the normal process? What is your experience with getting the funding that we need to mitigate the problem?
Sure, thanks, Dave. This is David Friedman, Staff Engineer, Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, for the record. I guess we approved this application and in the Brownfields program, and when we review applications initially, the program's goal is to be able to prepare a site for redevelopment in total, at least from the environmental perspective. And so we anticipate being able to do any kind of cleanup if that's necessary, should a phase 2 environmental site assessment determine one is a cleanup is merited. It wouldn't require any additional application process or anything like that, or any other processing for the funding. I could appreciate the board's concern about potential fiscal liability. I've thought a lot about this site, this kind of unknown of dumping, and I'm trying to think, what the potential costs are, and that's just kind of a preliminary thing. And again, in accepting any of these sites into the program, we certainly want to be able to see them through to the end. I can't imagine a situation here where, we wouldn't be able to afford cleaning up the site if we were allowed to go ahead and do it. I mean, just to be transparent with the board, I think the most costly thing would be if, say, PCB containing transformer oil were ever dumped on these properties. That would probably be the most expensive thing to take care of. And even then, I can't see it being more than tens of thousands of dollars, which is something our program can handle without difficulty. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
What size of acreage are we looking at? There's 2 parcels.
Yeah, I think the total is around 14 acres, if I'm not mistaken on that.
Questions?
Property between, this is Commissioner Haas, it's property between National and 95?
Yes.
Yes, I think is that what borders it? Does it go all the way down to National?
Ag 5.
Yeah, it's an Ag 5 zoning currently, yeah.
That area was used a lot for the city dump, county dump at one time. You are aware of that.
Yeah, and that's what we're told. It was either that or just people were dumping oil and things like that
It was
potentially.
actually, I mean, they were digging pits and dumping it. We've hauled off, after the houses were built, they put retaining walls in and different stuff here and there. And we hauled off a lot of garbage. So expect to find that, or you may be above it or what, but that whole area from Geraldo's all the way out, was used for dumping, even on the other side.
So Stacy and David, that was Commissioner Haas, who at that time was the owner of Haas Disposal. So he definitely would have firsthand knowledge of that.
So David, would you be doing both soil and water testing?
Depends on what the depth of groundwater is, and it would depend on what we find. So, for example, if we go out there and we find a lot of, typical as Commissioner Haas suggests, I think he's suggesting like primarily municipal solid waste and white goods and things of that nature. If the depth of groundwater is fair, far below that, say 20, 25 feet below that, then we wouldn't really anticipate any kind of transport of anything to the depth to the groundwater table, and we wouldn't sample the groundwater at that point. We would, based on what our findings were near the surface in the soil and to the depth that the whatever contamination we determine is there extends, then that would determine whether or not we investigate the groundwater.
Well, okay, it makes me a little nervous because we not only don't know whether we're going to end up with water issues as well as soil issues, or if we're going to end up with soil issues, and there's no promise that from EPA that they'll pay for it if there is. I mean, it's assumed maybe that they should have the money, but no guarantee.
Well, this is Commissioner Hill. So he had stated, the agenda, I guess, of the EPA is to pay for this is for redevelopment is their agenda. If we have no point in redeveloping it right now, or no plans on redeveloping it right now, then it's worth more to us as a land trade, possibly in the future, to just leave it lay. It's as a private person to come in there, if we were to do some sort of trade in the future for a more viable piece of land, a private person could potentially go in there and zone Ag 5 and build a pasture out of it or something, and everything would be fine. But if we have no desire at this point to redevelop it, I don't think we need to be spending money on it, doing an assessment on it.
So a developer, would they be required to get all this testing done before they could get approval to put up a house or an apartment building? Who could answer?
This is David Friedman. I will say that the phase 1 environmental site assessment, and these are a stepwise process. You complete the phase 1 to determine whether, under the parlance, what's known as a recognized environmental condition exists that moves it to a phase 2 where you sample to investigate the potential contamination issue identified. Under nearly all commercial real estate transactions anymore, where there's a bank or a mortgage house that's lending money, they do require these environmental site assessments if they're going to be financing a mortgage to purchase them. That's really the driver of those environmental site assessments. There's no Nevada state regulatory requirement that these assessments be done. This is a real estate transaction driven thing.
This is Commissioner Tipton. There's several things that bother me on this. We're being told now that Nevada Rural Housing Group is looking at other sites, but just from what Stacy said earlier today, earlier on this item. They're still looking at this site. And the first thing that bothers me, this was never brought to this board early on to see if that's something we wanted to do. It was a surprise when we found out about it. That's still not over that. And we're still talking about doing this to prepare for development. I haven't heard that come up in this board or on an agenda item at all, whether we want to develop that piece of ground or leave it lay. I haven't seen anything that maybe if we want to get rid of that property, that we don't like it sitting there empty, put it up for auction. There's another option that could be done. I mean, so I don't know. I think I agree more with what Commissioner Hill is saying today, that we just leave it lay for right now. Unless somebody has an idea of development that they want to see done on it.
Commissioner French, are you trying to weigh in?
Yeah, I had a couple of things I was curious about. Let's assume worst case scenario, and in that testing on that hill, they find the remnants of what would have been produced if that was a landfill. We all know that any of us that have lived here very long know that that was a landfill across that top of that hill years ago. If that landfill, if it was determined that there was less than 100 feet to the groundwater, as per Nevada law, below that landfill, that the remediation for alleviating that issue there after we identified it would be the removal of that material, correct? We would have to go from basically National all the way that north end of National all the way to Reinhardt Road, correct? To remove that material.
I don't,
that was all a land.
I don't know that I have the answer to that. But I think it would just, in my opinion, and I don't have any legal standing for this, but it would just be for the property that we owned, I would think. So.
Yeah, the thought being though that if the groundwater, if there was a potential for leachate into a groundwater, that would involve the entire site itself. I'm just curious, and I have to say it's kind of a solution in looking for a problem. Is what's being requested right now, and I just say right now what we have right there, I think it's important for us to. We got a lot of fish to fry out here on the ground, and the notion that we're going to need to look for something along this line immediately right now, I just have a hard time signing on to that, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I think it's. I don't think I'd feel any different than the first time this came forward, is that it's from a development perspective, there's a lot of options out there on the ground that we could look at as opposed to this site right here. So at any rate, I'm kind of in favor right now of the same decision we made the first time.
This is David Friedman, Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, again, for the record. Hearing the discussion today, it occurs to me that we did a similar community dump closure for the city of Ely and White Pine County a few years ago. If you would like, I certainly could share the documents with Dave. Could kind of take a look at that. We did not actually remove the waste material in that case. We simply capped it and closed it because the investigation determined that there was a very low probability of leachate formation based on the material that was in the dump. So that's a possibility for a finding here. Again, it sounds like maybe the board's kind of reaching a conclusion here, but again, if there's an interest, I could kind of provide some of that information to show you some precedent where this has been done. Thank you.
The reality is dumps by their nature, it's hard to tell what has went in them over, particularly when they're as old as this dump, going back to gosh knows when, early 1900s, I don't know, maybe earlier. So it's kind of a roll of the dice. I mean, what could have been there? Who knows? I kind of agree with what's being said. I think we're looking for a problem. If there was a need and a proposal to do something with it, then maybe we should look at it. But right now, there isn't that I know of.
I agree with that.
So Ken, from what I'm hearing from everyone is I'm not sensing there's an appetite to do anything right now. Can we just take a no action on this?
Yes, you can take note, you can table it.
Is there anybody who wants to take any type of action? Otherwise, we'll just table it.
Tabling it would be fine with me. This is Commissioner Frank.
Okay, then I believe we'll be tabling this item at this time. Thank you.
Stacy and David, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
We on 20, Dave?
21, actually.
Oh yeah, 21. 21 is county's grant contribution reduction to the Humboldt River Authority. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval to reduce the Humboldt County's grant funding by 23% due to higher than expected donations received by Humboldt River Water Authority, Humboldt River Basin Water Authority.
Mr. Chair, Dave Mendiola. So at their regular meeting last Friday, I'll have Commissioner Tipton bring you up to speed, but originally, I'll just give you a couple numbers. Originally, the commission did approve $3,500 of grant for cloud seeding purposes, and a reduction was due because they raised quite a bit more than the $60,000 they needed. So I'll let you take it from there, Commissioner.
Yeah, so we had reached out to the different counties in the Humboldt River Water Basin Authority Board and got the approval for the money, but then they got some more money in from Nevada Gold Mines, I believe, or maybe it wasn't Nevada Gold Mines, maybe it could have been Marigold, but one of the mines put in some money to it. And they got some private money that was put into it. So the board felt like they had to at least offer the county the overage back, which is about 23%. And, I made a motion at that board meeting to do that, to give the counties the option to receive their money back. And my hope is that this county would say, no, that we don't want that $805 back, so that we could push that forward and spend a little more money on collecting more data with this cloud seeding, so that possibly we have some ammunition, if you will, to go to the legislature and see if we can't refund that cloud seeding as an annual project. So that's why it's here today, to offer this board the opportunity either to accept that money back or to reject it and leave it with the Humboldt River Water Authority.
So to do a study or whatever it would entail to see what the cloud seeding actually, what benefits we actually received from the cloud seeding, that would probably have to be done by, what do they call them? Great Basin Institute or?
DRI.
Yeah, DRI.
DRI.
Desert Research.
Desert Research,
Yeah.
yeah. they'd have to do that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as I recall, didn't they talked about two possibilities, taking the additional dollars and applying it to a future cloud seeding effort and or to doing this data
Right.
research to find out whether or not it really does work so that you'll have, like Commissioner Tipton says, have ammunition when you go to the legislature as the fact that this does work, or if you don't want to go to them if you have no data at all, right? So.
Yeah, I made a comment at that board that I think it was up to the counties to decide whether we wanted to keep the money, get the money back, or to leave it with them, and leave it up to the Humboldt River Water Authority Board to decide how they were going to spend that.
I see. And you're talking just around the $800 figure?
Yeah, would be about $805. I don't know if you got an exact number from.
Yeah, 805 is the number that Jeff gave me. Yeah.
It would be $805.
And just one more comment. So none of this has been paid out yet, so we wouldn't have to get reimbursement. They haven't even billed us yet, so.
Right, they haven't billed it.
So they would just bill us $805 less than they were going to. So.
I did not make that meeting, so I would say that I would go with your recommendation. You were there, you heard the whole proceedings. And your recommendation is to not.
My recommendation is to not ask for it back and to go ahead and pay them the $3,500 that we had approved at a prior meeting.
Is it 3,500 or 3,000?
Well, it's 3,500. I see here previous action to donation of 3,000.
That was incorrect. It was 3,500
35.
as it turns out.
Okay.
And so on any motion, it would just be to reduce the amount of the grant. To deny. I said, if you're going to do a motion, you can either table it and do nothing, or if you're going to do a motion, I'm just saying it wouldn't be to get it reimbursement or to not give reimbursement. It would be to not reduce the amount.
If we just don't do any action on it, then they'll get the 3,500.
Right. Correct.
So
see
do we need to table it or just do we need a motion?
It's up to you. I'm not sure which way you're wanting to go.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we continue with the $3,500 that was approved at a prior commission meeting for Humboldt River Basin Water Authority and their cloud seeding project.
Okay. Motion's on the floor. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Okay, that brings us to item 23, Human Resources Request to renew applicant tracking system testing integration. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval to renew the county's subscription to the bridle test. How does that?
Biddle,
Bid-
Test Genius.
Biddle test.
Kind of strange.
Genesis skills testing service that integrates with our applicant tracking system, ATS, in the amount not to exceed $6,825. And pending the district attorney's review, the service allows for the administration of pre-employment skills testing. Discussion, possible action. Abel, you want to tell us a little bit more what that's about?
Absolutely. Abel Darrell, Nava Assistant County Manager, HR Director. For purposes of the record, I understand I'm between you and lunch, so I'll try to make this quick. Last year, I came before the board to request approval of purchasing of this integration into our applicant tracking system, the system that people use to apply to jobs online to Humboldt County. It administered pre-employment skills tests such as typing tests, how quick somebody can type, skill tests for Microsoft Office, for example, Word, Excel, also situational tests like filing or, for libraries, indexing, things like that. So we were able to not just look at an applicant on face value based on what they put down on their application, but actually put those skills to the test and get results, which are really telling. And before that, what we used to do when a manager wanted these sorts of tests, we would refer applicants to Nevada Job Connect to go in person and take the test. Then they would be printed out the results. They would either drop them off or take a picture of them and email them over to me. I would then upload them into our system, into their profile, and forward those results to the hiring manager for the department. And it was a very cumbersome process. So this gave us the opportunity to kind of modernize that process to where now somebody applies, once they're screened and moved forward into the system, it's as simple as sending them a link to the test. And I'll share my screen here, a sample of what that looks like. So here's the email an applicant would get to test. And so this is generated in bulk in the systems. So select everybody gets the link to go to the test, and they could take it at their leisure. So, if somebody's up in McDermott, they don't have to drive an hour or so to come to the testing facility. It makes it a lot better. I feel like the process before was kind of a turnoff to some applicants because they just have to go that extra step, drive there, get the test results, and turn them in. Whereas in this case, again, they can test from home or the library, their mobile device. Makes it really easy. And then we get those results right away, able to generate a report. So here's an example of a recent report. I redacted the names for privacy of the applicants. So this was the dispatch pre-employment testing, and they were testing on their keyboarding skills. They have to type real quick in an emergency situation and just in general to document that. So you can see the scores. The top applicant got, I believe like 50 words per minute, or that was their score, and it goes all the way down. So, we're able to generate that quickly, get it over to Cami so that she's ready to have that on hand as part of the whole interview process. And then I'll show you a more complex one. So this one was for the Winnemucca Convention and Visitors Authority. Kim really likes to test his applicants on various skills. So in this case, it was on spelling, Excel, Word, accounting principles, and business correspondence. So you can see the top candidate there scored very high. And you could see all the way down. Somebody might have just given up, decided maybe this isn't the right job for me.
Who puts this content in there? Who builds the test?
The tests, they're built by the company, the Test Genius. And so what we do is, in HR, we tell what tests do we want for this particular recruitment. And so they're generated that way. So it's a simple process, and then we send the link over to the applicants to test.
Commissioner Hill again, is this expandable to say more than just clerical type positions, say like an HVAC technician or somebody that's a specialized skill trades person that we would be looking at, that we would want to know specific skills?
Yes, let me, I included in the agenda, let me take a look here, the test descriptions. So I'll share that with you here to kind of show you what tests are available for our managers to be able to administer. So here's some of the clerical ones: keyboarding, 10-key data entry. Let me see if I can make that bigger here. Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I can move back.
Yep. So I'll just scroll down slowly here. Records locating, Outlook, PowerPoint, legal keyboarding and medical keyboarding. So somebody in the district attorney's office, for example. Bank deposits, reconciliation, our comptroller's office, treasurer's office, basic math, petty cash, applying policies, which would be important to, like HR or our office,
So this is something you use as a tool, right? You don't,
Yes.
not just because somebody gets 100% across the line is going to.
No.
give you reason to say, yes, that's the one.
No, it's part of, it's one piece of the whole. So we look at the application, we look at the scores, and sometimes even the scores aren't totally indicative of overall performance. It could be that maybe somebody's not a fit culturally, you know, or just not the right fit for various reasons. They could score the highest. You know, we've had situations where somebody's scored awesome on a test, but they weren't the first person chosen for other factors. You know, their interview didn't really go well because maybe they didn't have the skill set in certain things based on that interview. So it's not the end all, but it does help in kind of narrowing things down and maybe recognizing when someone's embellishing on their application with what their skills are. So
Your departmental heads using this?
yes, so the WCVA uses it heavily. The sheriff's offices uses it for like dispatch. I think recently Tammy used it for her office assistant.
Organization and numerical skills.
Do you find it helpful?
Oh, very.
So nothing,
A lot of people that can't alphabetize.
nothing outside of clerical. I don't see anything vocational or
Oh,
type testing or.
let me see, mechanical comprehension, assessment designed to measure applicants' knowledge of mechanical and physical
Oh, I
actions and
see.
reactions. So there's that.
I think this would help when you were hiring for a position. You wouldn't get surprised by your hire.
For sure.
Or if you hire someone too, because let's say they just fit, but you recognize where they maybe need help in improving. So we can start a baseline performance review and say, okay, here are your goals for the next year. You're going to improve your skills on Word or alphabetizing or indexing, what have you. So it really helps managers too in that respect.
And this is going to be an annual cost for this program?
Yes, so it's part of our applicant tracking system, and I kind of liken it to, you know, we have the Tyler system for our accounting, accounts payable, receivable. This is just a component of the human resource information system, adding that in to be able to perform that function.
Would you see any benefit into a three-year contract instead of doing this annually?
Oh, yeah, I'd love a 3-year contract. I could probably get pricing to see if they'd might do that. It's just that, you know, we said this was for a year, and they tried to email me at my old email, and I for some reason that wasn't forwarding to me, so I think they.
I think I recall the
to know.
discussion. We wanted to try it for a year to see
Yes.
if it was what it was portrayed to be in.
No, it's absolutely, it's been more than that.
Did you happen to break it down? I noticed that it's for a year, and now you want to renew it.
Yes.
Did you break it down on how many tests you actually used and how much it cost us?
Well, we use it continuously for dispatch, and let me see, I can log into the system and let you know what that is.
Join, you said Join used to do this, Join or one of those,
Nevada Job Connect.
and they do it for free?
They do it for free. The problem with that is that, you know, with this system, we're able to just send a link. Somebody could do it at their leisure. They don't have to travel. And there aren't Nevada Job Connect sites across the state. So they have 3 that are by appointment only in Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and Henderson. They have 9 where no appointments necessary. 1 in Reno, 1 in Sparks, Carson City, 2 in Las Vegas, 1 in Ely, Elko, Fallon, and Winnemucca.
So they have to go to those sites.
They have to physically go to those sites.
So
to
potentially,
test.
the way we have it set up, if somebody in Kings River applies for one of our positions, they could get on a computer at the library and
Absolutely.
take this test.
Or their laptop, or
Another state.
Or at a different
or
state.
another state. That's the thing too. It's before this process, it was let's say somebody applied for dispatch. I would have to work with the applicant to find a certified testing center for them to be able to take the test. because we don't accept the online tests where, somebody could just go and take the test online because they could change the number or, that sort of thing. So we have confidence in these results.
Where does this money come out of, Dave?
It's part of
IT.
IT?
Part of that software, we combine them all into that line item within the IT budget, so.
Does this cost the same as it was last year? Has it changed at all?
I believe the price went up just a little bit. Your software usually does incrementally. I don't have that exact.
Usually go up 3 to 5% per year is average.
And if you normally if you do a 3-year contract, do you usually get a?
Not with software,
No?
usually not. They give you a number and then they say it'll be an additional 3 to 5%. And that's good. 3 to 5% is good. Sometimes it's more expensive, but they usually build that in. But it's worth asking, that's for sure.
So I have my list here. We have it for 12 and one of them is continuous. So it's all year long for dispatch. We're always, that recruitment is always open and people are always applying just because of the turnover over there. So, and the number of applicants taking it also is more, whereas in the past, you'd probably get about 60, 65%, 50% that would follow through because they had to go and do that physically. Now we get a much better response rate with that. So
I think we probably get a bigger number of applicants probably using this process than you would if you had them go to join or come in to get it. And in today's job market we're in, it's hard to get employees. It's difficult right now to find employees.
Yeah, we don't want to make it more difficult for them to apply.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think probably even more important is you get rid of the chaff.
Yeah.
Because anybody can say anything on a piece of paper on an application. And then even answering a question in an interview, unless it's a very specific technical question, you can't test typing skills in an interview. I mean, I guess you could put a computer in front of them, but this stuff just really, as you can see from some of those results, some of the people at the bottom just didn't do it because they knew damn well they couldn't do it. And that gets rid of them immediately.
Yeah. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's good.
Can I get a motion if there's no further discussion? So we're going to run into our other meeting here.
Our lunch meeting. I guess I could make a motion here. I would make a motion that we approve to renew the county subscription to the BIDL.
Yes.
Test Genius Skills Testing Services that integrates with our applicant tracking system in the amount not to exceed $6,825, pending the DA's review.
Okay. Sounds good now. Motion's on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much, commissioners.
Okay. Do we want to try to eat a sandwich before the stop or wait?
Food is here, I think.
Let's do. I'm hungry.
I'm hungry too.
My mind's getting blurry.
6
We'll
o'clock.
take just a short break here. Can we eat while we're,
How long I can put up a sign?
let's take 15 minutes.
Put up a sign. We're out to lunch.
He's back. We're live.
Okay. Okay, we are back. Call this meeting back to order. We are on item 23, which is the county manager's quarterly priorities, goals, and expectations update. Excuse me, for 2021-22 fiscal year. Consideration, discussion, and possible action as established in the employment agreement between Humboldt County and County Manager Dave Mendiola to review the priorities, goals, expectations that were set in late August of 2021 to assess the progress under each category. The commissioners may consider revising these priorities, goals, expectations, depending upon current events facing the county, discussion and possible action. So this is something that we worked on and tried to put I guess, I don't know what we call it, plan or something, and
Directives.
directives, I guess, that's a good word for it. And I think I'll just turn it over to you, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave Mendiola, County Manager. So what we did, as you recall, is we broke it into priorities, goals, and expectations. So I think what I'll just do is quickly go through the priorities. And again, if I go too fast, stop me. We can ask questions, or you can wait till the end, whatever you want to do. But one of the big priorities was on budgeting. It was brought up that we wanted to look at other ways possibly of doing the budgeting process. So I've had several discussions with Gina Rackley, and Gina and I both really think it would be valuable if we brought in Alan Kalt. Alan is currently with Pool Pact. He had 30 years with Churchill County as the chief financial officer. And the idea, we've talked to him about that. I need to get back to him and look at a possible date for doing it. But I think the main thing that our thought process was to get an outside view of what we do. Alan, as I understand it, they did their budgeting much like we do. So he'll be able to give you another perspective as to why. And again, this goes back to specifically about why we project expenditures and project revenues the way we do. and then how it all, washes out in the end. So that's one thing we like to do. In addition to that, he'll also talk about other approaches that you could take and what he believes the good are about them, and what may be pitfalls with those approaches. So that's one thing that we have done. The real question is, when do we do it? In my opinion, we kind of want to do it close to our budget hearing, but not too close. Something that when you get that training and that impact, have an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. And we would do it just for the commissioners with Gina and I, and then we would probably do a similar training with our management team as well. But I'd want to separate those out because the approaches and the way they look at it are different.
So you're not talking about having him address the commission as a whole?
No, we would. We'd have a meeting, an open meeting, just like we're having here.
Yeah.
We'd have one agenda item, and that is to have him present to the commissioners about budgeting. And he would cover, here's the way you do it today, Humboldt County. Here's the good, the bad, and the concerns. Here's another option you might want to consider. Potentially tell you other counties that do it that way, and the good and the bad about those particular ways. The goal would be to give you a more in-depth as to why we do what we do and the way we do it. As part of that, we've developed a spreadsheet that kind of shows you over, I think we were going to make it about a 10-year period, what we've projected for revenues and what was actually what we received in each one of those 10 years, what we projected for expenditures and what we actually expended. And then the important part where you tie all the pieces together is ending fund balance. Because the big problem, and we all experienced this last year again, but it happens every year, is that you get after an exhausting day with the public hearing or the budget hearing, and you're all excited, you made some cuts, you cut this and you did this and you did that, and Gina comes back to you a week or two later and says, we're projecting a $7 or $8 million budget deficit. And of course, all the air comes out of the room and everybody's upset and trying to figure out, that's impossible. We can't do that. And so what we want to show you is that it's just a projection. And we can show you that by showing you the data as to where we thought we would be and then where we actually ended up every year over a 10-year period. And I think once you see that, your heart rate will go back down to normal and you'll realize that, there's a method to the madness and the way this works. But we really think it's much more important that it come from somebody, again, who's got a lot of credibility, which is Alan Kalt. He's highly thought of in many arenas, but specifically with respect to finance and that type of thing. So that's one of the things that I have put together and done, and Gina's working with me on that. The next thing is we talked about, doing some other relevant issues to the budget process. I mentioned actually training the management team as well from the perspective of, when you're projecting your revenues, here's some things to think about. And maybe one of those things is as part of that training that, again, Alan Kalt will conduct, will be to say to them, and I have done this in the past, but some do it, some don't. So maybe we just set, a policy that says, come in with your wants and your needs, and so there'd be a list of all the wants. And these would be things that we don't really need, but we'd like to. And if we could, here's what it could help us with. And then those things that are needs, in other words, they have to be in the budget and here's why. So, and that might help us to cut through, some of the stuff we go through and to get, through them quicker and with less pain and anxiety. So that's another thing that we're talking about, doing that. And then, of course, anytime they've got, what's the impact? Both, how does it help us to be more efficient? How does it help us save money, if that's the case, whatever it might be, for the money we're going to expend? So get into some more details on that front as well. And then we talked about research options to make the budget process align with short-term as well as long-term goals of the county. And so it's my belief that this occurs as part of the current budget process. And again, it goes back to managers and elected officials. For the most part, as you know, everybody just puts in the budget that sustains them. The only thing that really goes up is labor costs, wages and benefits, and those types of things, for the vast majority of them. The ones that do have big impact and the ones that we do spend a lot of time on are like the road department, public works, IT now, where we never used to in the past. It's become a much bigger item. And of course, buildings and grounds with all the special infrastructure projects. So those are the kind of things that we have to, again, as part of our training, talk a little bit about that as well, as how do we do a better job? And again, last year, buildings and grounds did take that approach of, here's the needs, must be in because, something's failing, we got to replace it. And then they had a wants list. And again, the commission went through the wants list and you ended up including 4 or 5 things that were on the wants list as something you felt strongly enough about that we didn't need to wait for it. So I think that, so that's part of it. And then of course, the historical piece, I mentioned that already, the budgeting. If you look at that spreadsheet, Alan's actually working on it right now and going to add some additional things. But I think it tells an amazing story about the budgeting process, because when I got here, I think I told you, most frustrating thing I'd ever done, because I was used to the private sector and you had a projection of what you wanted to do for revenue and then here's where your expenditures, and there wasn't a lot of budgeting. We kind of knew what we had and what we would have based on, again, history. A little different here, but again, this spreadsheet I think tells a huge story, and Alan will walk you through that. And I think that will be very valuable to it. So with respect to the budget, that's good. Timely, the other big item was the red flag law. We talked about that earlier. And that's kind of why I put it on the agenda today. was simply because we did need some more direction going forward, as you heard, with respect to the lawsuit, and the determination was made today that we will continue to go forward on that. And so, but I was asked to follow up. I did, got together with Rue Goodnow, Sheriff Allen. We talked about the issue several times, and then we brought it before you today. So that was accomplished in this last quarter. With respect to goals, under goals, one of the things that was brought up was cohesion of departments within the county. And I think that kind of came out of the issue we were having with the assessor's office and getting the backup data done and all that. And I think, again, that in the end, in my personal opinion, it was a communication issue with our IT department. And we did have several meetings, but then we'd have the meetings, certain things were supposed to be done and then never, well, things got done, but it was never reported back to the assessor that they got done. And so now with Tim leaving now, we have got some current issues we're working on, again, back to the backup data stuff. So we do have a new guy coming in that has a lot of background and backing up data and stuff. So we're excited to get him on board. Not sure when that will be. In the meantime, we're going to reach out to one of our consultants that we have on contract. So we'll deal with that. But I think Rick and I are going to be meeting with Andy tomorrow to follow up. And so I've been trying to do that with Andy on a more consistent basis. But in the meantime, just so you know, the backup data the process was put in place, established. The reporting was a bit of an issue because it was the software that we have it's so detailed. It can give you so many reports that all your phone would do is ring all with reports. So we were trying to get down to 2 or 3 critical items that would sound an alarm. And it's working because that was one of the first emails I had over the weekend from the assessor saying that alarms went off. We've got to talk about this. So we'll be visiting about that tomorrow. And then, of course, as far as, working to foster communication and cohesion between the departments, I think we all get along very well. I have good relationship with whether it's an elected official or one of my direct reports. We do meet as a team monthly, and we talk about issues that affect the entire county. And then we also dig down into each one of their areas that maybe they've got a problem area, maybe they've got an area where they need some help so that we can help each other across departmental lines. And we do a lot of that. Sometimes somebody's slower than somebody else and they can bring a body over or somebody to help assist somebody get through a difficult time. Doesn't happen a lot, but it's there and we know it. So that's worked out very well. And then, of course, part of that process is to establish a baseline of what their expectations are, what my expectations are of them. And so I think that, those are the kind of things that you work very hard at and you have to constantly update them because things change and what's going on the ground is a moving target. Under C, identified issues with the assessor's office regarding the disaster. I've already talked about that. So that issue was identified, resolved from a technical perspective. Now we just need to do follow-up with Tim Hennigan gone. We're bringing Ben up to speed. He's got fairly good knowledge of what was done. Tim left a reference guide behind to follow these practices if XYZ happens. So that's very helpful, but we have a consultant that's helping us as well. As for expectations, one of the expectations you put on me was to communicate with the board members and timely return calls. So as you know, we do a staff report for every county commission meeting, and that's listed right at the top of every agenda. And that has really just become me copying, pasting the staff reports I get from every elected official or department head. And I went to that only because, they've providing the detail for what they're asking for. They're giving you the background. So I copy that over. There have been a few occasions where I wanted to add something to it. And I usually try to put it in a different color so that you can see what my comments are about those. So we do do that. In addition, every Friday, as you know, you get the Friday prior to the commission meeting, and actually the 2 weeks prior to the commission meeting, any new documents that have come in that pertain to anything we've dealt with in the past. Let's say it's a BLM issue or water issues or nitrate issues, whatever it might be. We'll send out documents that we receive to you. It's something that if you want to read it, you can. If it's not important to you, you can file it away somewhere. And so we've been doing that in addition to my activity report weekly. And then, of course, you know, personal calls when an item or issue is specific to a commissioner. As you know, each one of you sit on different boards, and I will call back and forth. Commissioner Tipton and I have talked a little bit about this cloud seating thing as that came up in the meeting. Commissioner Hill has been working with us on the renovation of the courtrooms. We had our kickoff meeting, and so, you know, different things like that. If I have a specific question for you, I will reach out to you. And again, same thing goes both ways. If you have a question of me, just give me a call at any time. And, you know, I'll get back if it's documentation you need or follow up. The other thing that kind of comes out of every one of these meetings, I try to take really copious notes, and I mark them with an asterisk. So things I need to follow up with. And I've got 3 or 4 today that I'll follow up. One of them is getting you that, the information that you had requested. I forgot what it was on, Commissioner Haas, but I'll get that to you today. So those are the kind of things that I try to keep the communication channels open at all times. And of course, I talked earlier about we also now send out the agendas to you. In the past, we didn't do that. Prior to, you know, when the Friday prior to when we actually have to publish, which now gives you a full 2 weeks to look at the agenda, see if there's something on there that, you know, you don't like, you do like, or maybe we're missing something. Maybe there's something you expected to see, and that's a great opportunity for you to, you know, give Michelle a call, give me a call, and say, hey, whatever happened to X, Y, or Z? And then, you know, if we've forgotten it, or there may be a reason. It may be it's delayed, we can't get information, could be any number of things. And then, of course, the weekly reports that I provide, both myself and the assistant county manager. And again, that I think my idea on that has always been, and that started almost 2 years ago, was just to let you know what I'm doing every week. Meeting with these people, I had a meeting on this topic or that topic. As you'll notice, sometimes I'll go into some detail on what actually took place. Usually I only do that if I know it's gonna be before you at a board meeting coming up, and just to give you some insight into what's going on. But normally I'll just tell you I met with these people or something like that. If there's something significant, I'll tell you. And again, I would say the same thing to you on that. If you know, it's a two-way street. So if you see something in an activity report that either don't understand or you don't like, or you did like, whatever, give me a call, let's talk about it. And because that helps me to plan what other things I may have to do the following week. So that helps me as well. So that's a quick rundown, if you will, of where we started in this process. And I guess I would just then turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, and see if there are any questions or follow-up.
No, the only thing that I guess I felt maybe is still missing, I don't know what your intentions or goals is. It's kind of like telling you, I know you have a certain way of doing your job and you've done it that way, but I would like to see, I find the budgeting process very frustrating every year. And I would like to see, you know, I'd mentioned this before, that you take the time to meet with those departmental heads prior to them coming to us and going over their budgets. And if there's anything that you can see that you know better than I, and the rest of the commissioners even, of what's going on in each department, and what's really needed, and maybe what can wait or isn't needed at all. So I'd really like to see you go over some of those budgets if you can find a time prior to them coming to us.
Right, and let me respond to that. So I have talked to you in our management team meeting, and then I will begin the process here in January of talking to those managers. What I've asked them to do, what I'm going to ask them to do is, they get the B1 form, which we call the B1 form. It's sort of it's the summary page that you get. When you get your packets and the binders, there's a summary form, and usually on that, it'll tell you if they're asking to hire anybody. At the bottom under special projects, it'll say, we want a new vehicle or 2 vehicles or some new projects that's coming up that's outside the norm. What I've asked them to do is to identify any line item. And in the case of IT last year, they did it for every line item, which was probably too much. If you recall, they had all the detail behind it. It was about this thick, so it was a bit much. What I think I'm going to ask them to do is just identify those line items that have changed. If there's an increase or a decrease, or tell us why. What's going on with that particular line item? Give us highlights of what's going on in your budget that's maybe different from the last year. And that will help us to identify things that are new. So, but you're right. When I do meet with them, those are the kind of things that come out to me. Usually I wait. This last year was a bad example since I wasn't at the budget hearing. So normally that's when I would bring it up to you and say, hey, this is what's going on, and just give you a heads up. Here's why we're doing this. That didn't happen this year. So what I will do is, what I've asked them to do is on a separate page to outline. So let's say they have 3 line items that are going to impact that budget for that year. They would give detail by line item, what's changed, what's new, and why. Why is it new? That kind of thing. So that should address that issue. That should help us.
Concerning those budget issues, I think, and more than likely because you weren't here for it, but when we moved all of that into IT budget, and we were halfway through our budgets before it dawned on any of us that some of the departments weren't cutting their budget. They were using the IT dollars that had went away to put other stuff in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that was a little disappointing. I don't know if that was done by design. I doubt that. Or they just forgot to take it out. I'm not sure. But that's a good point. Very good point.
The easiest way to do it is you look at their budget and you just figure out whether you can present it for them.
Yeah.
The budget process this last year was really bad, and I'm sorry that you couldn't be there. I'm really sorry that you couldn't be there, but it was a little tough. So, but like Ron, it's we need the manager to go over them, so that because with them reporting to you, you know more about what's going on in there than we did. So,
yeah.
On the reports from on Fridays that you guys send in, I really appreciate that. You could add a little more once in a while, and you just addressed it, but
Right.
I have questions, and maybe I should. But the problem is, it's on Friday that I get it before a meeting, and I'm not going to bother you on the weekend unless it's absolutely necessary. I will not call you on the weekend because it's your weekend off. I haven't seen any for you for 2 weeks. Is that?
No, I had a early off on Friday. There was no internet, so I'm going to roll my report over into this week as well. It was just general human resources stuff that I can't really go into details.
Okay. See, I am reading them.
I know. I was anticipating that.
So.
Well, this is Commissioner Hill. I think it's a move forward for sure from when we started. I don't know how it was done in the past, but I think it's structured well. I think it's good that we're holding Dave accountable for the goals and expectations that we've set, and it's good to hear the reports on where he's at. It's good to see the cohesion between the departments and what you're trying to do to bring the departments closer together in communications and make sure that everybody kind of knows what everybody else is doing. That's huge to me. This is a great report. It shows that the directions that we advise, I guess, are set is is being followed. And I appreciate the open communication. If something needs to be tweaked along the way, then we have the ability to do that. You know, if we need to switch directions, then something becomes a bigger priority, then we have that opportunity to do that. So,
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Commissioner French? Commissioner
Can you
French?
guys hear me now?
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was muted or not. I'm getting some reverb in here. I apologize if it's coming back, but I just had one thing that I think we could add, and maybe even add it to future agenda items on item 26. Following the conversation we had with the DA's office today, having to do with the DA not being able or unwilling to comply with a commission request for action, I would propose that we have some sort of a agenda item. I don't know if it's formal or whether we have a workshop or something, but I think we need to propose some sort of meeting where we can go through ordinance modifications, the decision to hire a compliance officer, remediation protocols, including kind of a standard compliance protocol, which may even include a criminal complaint or a request for a court order in some cases. And I think that the idea behind it is to set some sort of protocol in play that that all sides, that all of us that have a job to do with regard to these nuisance complaints, we all have know where we're coming from on it and what is coming next. And it seems to be it's becoming more and more problematic, and I see this as a real problem down the road if we don't get our hands around it. So I'd like to see something put together along that line, because I really think there's some room for improvement there.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to that? I assigned Abel to look into the nuisance ordinances, and he has been working with Wendy. They've identified some other counties and what they do with respect to nuisances that I think are very interesting, and I think probably track along the lines of what we talked about today with respect to get them into the courts rather than putting this before you guys, which I think is a lot more effective. We have also just had a discussion with Steve Balkenbush, who was longtime pool pact attorney, and Steve has said he's willing to help us with that piece. So I sent him a bunch of data last week. He's going to be digging into that and helping us to look at revising our ordinances. And again, the challenge is always the same. In the DA's office, the matter of bulk of work that they have, taking time for things like that when they're battling issues with child support and criminals and things like that. So hopefully that will help us to move forward. One of the things I'm going to bring up here in a few minutes when we talk about future agendas is the retreat. And every year, as you know, we do our annual retreat. It's the third Monday in January. And one of the items, I'm going to change up the format. I'd like to change up the format and go away from doing an update by every department, which is what we've done in the past, well, at least the past couple of years, and go back to just high level things that are high on our agenda right now. And right now I've got a list of 8 items that I'd like to keep the retreat to. And one of those is the nuisance ordinances. And the hope is that we'll have information to present to you at that time on nuisances, on what we found from other counties. And I've asked Mr. Balkenbush specifically if he could have at least an outline drawn up by then so that we could discuss it in our retreat. Now, we may need to come back again and have a more detailed discussion, but at least we can get a high level at that point in time of kind of the direction we'd like to go. Make sure that meets with your expectations and the direction you guys think it should go. Make sure it's going to be effective so that we don't get into these You know, it's like going into the washing machine. It just goes round and round and round. In the meantime, I was thinking along the same lines you mentioned, Commissioner French. What we can do a better job of on the staff report is to, when we do a public hearing and it's on a nuisance and it's been up once or twice before, is give you an update of what took place at the last meeting and what potentially could take place in the next meeting, and give you guys the details of what you can do next, what the next steps might be. Until which time we get new nuisances, which hopefully will give you, kind of take it out of your hands and put it in the hands of the courts and let the judges deal with these folks on these things. So I think that was a really good recommendation, but anyway, we're moving down the road on the nuisance piece and we're trying to put that in high gear. And then with respect to, like I said, the staff reports, we can do a better job of giving you background of what's already happened and what you might be able to do in the next meeting.
Okay. Well, I think that this.
Also, one other thing, if I might add to the retreat meeting in January, I'm wondering if maybe just ahead of that, or maybe one of the first items in that retreat item would be the overview of our budget, and possibly take that opportunity to talk about some of our options with regard to the budget numbers prior to starting on the remainder of the information that we'll receive at the retreat. I'm just a suggestion. It may or may not work.
Well, that is one of the things I have as a question mark, is actually doing that budget training at the retreat. But the other thing we're talking about is maybe we hold off on doing that until February, a month prior to the actual budget hearings, to keep it fresh on your mind, rather than having 2 months go before we have the budget hearings. So I'll let you guys decide that. I will bring this back on January 3rd, and you can tell me what you want on the retreat agenda. Okay, and we'll have two opportunities to do that. Okay.
Okay, we are running a little bit behind. I do think this is we're going in the right direction here with the county, this what do we call it? Not a plan.
Expectations, priorities, and goals.
Yeah, this deal. I think this is really good. And, you know, it's, I guess, human nature to only think about what we can do better and what still aren't doing right. But I see a lot of changes that have happened in the last year that I've been chair, with new commissioners, since the new commissioners have come on and stuff, that are positive. Everything that we've brought up, I believe the county manager has addressed to the best of his ability. Haven't fixed everything yet, but he is addressing it, and I appreciate that.
I agree.
I agree with that. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to, there was no, do we have to
No action.
that? No action?
No action.
My only recommendation, if you're going to add anything or amend, would be to approve that. But if you've already done that and you're not adding anything, then no need.
There's not really anything they've added, just some comments.
Okay.
Yeah,
So.
that's what I think. Okay, so no actions needed there. Item 24 is the county calendar. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the 2022 county manager's calendar of events, including dates for county commission meetings and other internal events. Discussion and possible action.
So on this, Commissioner, or Chairman Cherry, Dave Mendiola, County Manager, it's just, it was one last time for you to look at it, see if there were any dates that stood out to you that we missed on that. It's gone through the managers and the elected officials several times now, so I think we're pretty clean at this point. Looks good. Again, it's not like this is set in stone. We change things over the course of the year when things come up. So, and things get added to it, of course, special meetings, those kind of things. But I think we're pretty much set with this. So just a heads up to let you know if something happens that, you know, you can always come to us and talk about it, and we'll, if we need to add something, we will, or if there's a problem with a particular date that affects more than two of you, then we got a problem and we'll probably have to set another meeting date. But that's something we can do down the road. So, but generally speaking, you're good to go on this calendar.
Okay.
Does not need to be approved, by the way, unless you'd like to.
Nope.
Will our calendars through email be updated to this?
We can do that, absolutely.
What we can do, Abel Daryl Navas, Assistant County Manager, HR Director for purposes of the record, what we can do is we can add the meetings for next year already in the calendars and invite the commission to those. So they're just placeholders that already have the meeting and link information. That way they're already on your calendar. So we can do that in advance, if that's helpful
Well, I
for you.
think it'd be good if you're planning to do
Mhm.
something out,
It just
down the
pops
road,
up.
be able to see it, especially on, sometimes you don't think of something being a holiday and it is, so it's a different day. Or
Yeah.
county or the months that
I
have
like that idea.
more than one, or have, 5 Mondays in it?
Yeah, and I usually do that for like our management team meeting. Since we have it nailed down when we're gonna have the meetings, I just create the calendar items, send it off to the team, and that way they know when the meetings are. So we can easily do that for you.
Yeah,
Do we need to approve that, Dave, or not?
No.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. All right, so no action necessary there. Next was miscellaneous reports and correspondence. Take into consideration, we're already 22 minutes over, so if you have any
I
reports.
don't have any.
I had 2 meetings this Commissioner Hill, but nothing to report. I went to 2 different meetings,
Yeah, I had none.
3 different meetings.
Commissioner French, do you have anything that needs to be reported?
I'll hold off on reporting on meetings. I just report that I've got 2 meetings on Thursday, the 16th, and 1 NACO Board of Directors on Friday, the 17th.
Okay, thank you. Future agenda items?
So, Mr. Chair, Dave Mendiola again. Right now, I've got the public hearing again that we talked about being January 18th. Part of that, of course, will be to update the resolution with specific actions required by the individual. Also, I put a note down here that I'll work with the DA to discuss, I think you mentioned about a misdemeanor, filing a misdemeanor if they don't meet certain requirements at a certain time.
Just to clarify, the resolution is going to be updated today and sent out. So we won't be updating the resolution at a future public hearing.
No, that's what I meant.
Okay.
We would just have that available for them at that time as well. But yeah.
And then I would just ask for you not to specify what kind of action is going to be filed, but just within the resolution include a blurb that should you not abate this nuisance by that date, the district attorney's office may take legal action against you.
Okay.
When I prepare it, I'll send it through your review prior to forwarding it to the chairman.
Right.
Perfect.
And then we just talked about the retreat. So I wanted, that's a future agenda item. We'll talk more in detail. I'll have a line item for that again on January 3rd. And that's all I have from this meeting today. I don't know if you have anything else.
What about crickets and grasshoppers? Isn't that something we should be getting on?
Well, I'm all over it. Right now, we're trying to find, we've been waiting on Robin Gray for a specific job description so that we could put out some feelers to find somebody, either another company or an individual that could do that work. According to Robin, there are a lot of people that do this for other counties, not only in Nevada, but all over the country, and that we shouldn't have any problem finding somebody. The challenge is finding somebody who would want to do what she does, which is have her own company and just, that kind of a thing. It may be a requirement that we actually hire somebody between the city and the county to do that work.
I was just curious, where we use Jeff Shrimp to do our baiting and stuff, if anybody talked to him, would he be interested in something like that?
Yeah, I reached out to Jeff 2.5, 3 months ago. He is interested. I hooked him up with Robin, but they've never spoken. I tried to hook him up with Robin, but they've never spoken. Robin did not feel that Jeff was a good solution. primarily because what he does and what Robin does is very different, night and day. But my point to Robin was, well, that may be true today, but that doesn't mean that Jeff or somebody he hires couldn't hire somebody to work alongside, because Robin will be here through this next year. And to work, and that was part of her agreement with us, was to train a new individual to do the same thing she does. So that's what we're hoping, either whether it's through Shrimp, which he had interest in, or another individual is yet to be decided.
This Commissioner Hill, that's probably a pest control license to apply that bait.
Yeah.
So isn't there another couple pest control companies in town?
Well, there is, but this is a much bigger deal. Again, I'm going.
That
from
may be
Robin's
interested in
perspective.
getting the training too. You know?
Yeah, and I think and you're right, that's a good point. We can reach out to David, I believe it is.
Dave Hawkins, I
Hawkins,
believe, yeah.
And to see if they would be interested in looking into that, because I think it's probably a pretty good business venture. But
For sure.
But what Robin does is goes out and checks them year round. You know, he's looking for things, puts out baits. So there's a lot of physical activity and then a lot of note taking and
A lot of babysitting and
stuff. Yeah. And it's very involved. So something you really have to dig in, because it's really kind of a full-time job, even though there are some months in the winter where obviously things slow down. So,
okay.
so yeah, we're working on that.
I had that on my list too, because it's, we're relying on Robin to get it done.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize Robin would be here next year, help train, but, we got to get pushed because black flies aren't going to.
Yeah, so I've got it on my list of things to do, to get in touch with Robin in the next couple of weeks and get that job description. And mainly the job description is designed to do two things. Number one, when I talk to a David Hawkins or a Shrimp, to find out, here's the kind of stuff you'd have to learn. Are you willing to do this? Can you do this? Or are you willing to hire somebody to do this? That kind of a thing. It's for that reason. And then if all those fail, you need a job description. If I've got to bring it back before the commission to see if that's another position we want to hire on or so.
It's got to be done one way or the other.
Right.
And I can't say enough good for Robin. I mean,
Yeah.
I was here when they were bad. I've seen what he's done, worked with him for a long time.
Indeed.
Any other items you want, future agenda items? If not, then we,
Mr.
yeah,
Chairman,
uh-huh.
this is Commissioner French. I had a real quick question as to with regard to with Robin's position. Are we contemplating combining what Robin does with the aquatic side of it with the crickets and grasshopper abatement work that we do? Maybe trying to get a dual position, or are we trying to split that off? Because ultimately that could be, if we had both those types of abatement challenges in that one job, that would definitely be a full-time job.
Mr. Chair, so yeah, my response for that would be yes. That was why I went to Jeff Shrimp, because he's already doing that work and it would make sense that he could do this other work. Again, as I said, he was interested and I just haven't had the chance to follow up with him. Well, I've kind of been waiting on Robin to get this job description, but I don't think I can wait much longer, and I'll just try to force my way through this process. So,
Well, as someone who saw what Jeff did and how he did it and how on the spot he was, I'm reluctant to not use Jeff on his cricket stuff. He kept the cricket numbers down. It's evident within town, out of town. Whenever you called him, he was there as soon as he could be, and worked hard at it too. Weekends, it didn't matter. I don't want to.
Yeah, I'll just say this, Commissioner French. I would say, yes, what Robin does is technical, and she has been spot on in terms of staying on top of the infestations and whatnot. But it isn't rocket science, and it's something that you could train anybody to do that specifically for the habitats that they're working in on the Humboldt River and the species that they're trying to control and the chemicals that are available the federal standard and whatnot they have to use. It's straightforward. It's not rocket science. We could train somebody to do that work. It's just a matter of getting somebody who's is diligent to stay on top of it.
Okay. There's nothing else? Then public comment. Do we have any public comment for the Humboldt County Commission meeting? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. We will now, or very soon, be turning to the Humboldt County Board of Health meeting. We're going to take a